Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is Ed Lamb, BYU Associate Head Coach, Assistant. Coach, welcome back to BYU Sports Nation.
Oh, thank you for having me.
What did you guys work on in practice today specifically? I know that each day has its own little agenda, but what was the emphasis today?
Fundamentally, I think across the board, the whole roster, it's footwork at this point. You know, we have, by necessity, we have to focus on assignments until the assignments are down, you know, as we put in the offense and in the defense. And, of course, it's new for about every guy on the team. We're doing a lot of new things as far as assignments go. And even though we talk about footwork and eye control from day one, it kind of takes a back seat in terms of the corrections on the video from day to day. Now that the guys, for the most part, know their assignments, we're able to get back to the details of playing the positions, the nuances of the positions, the footwork, the eye work, the hand placement, things like that.
It seems like, obviously, the previous coaching staff wanted to run at a certain pace. You can run at whatever pace you want as a new coaching staff. But it seems like there's been kind of this return to fundamentals. You talk about footwork. Well, why simplify it this early for this team?
Well, it's really predicated upon the offensive philosophy. So you've really already said it. If Ty Detmer and Coach Satake decided that we were going to be a tempo offense, then the whole emphasis would be on conditioning and out-toughing the opponent and having mechanisms to get defensive calls in quickly. But, you know, when the offense takes the time to go back into the huddle, both during practice and in a competitive game, when they take the time to go back into the huddle and to think about the previous play and maybe make corrections on their own in the way that they're doing things or making their calls and adjustments, then the defense has to respond to that, and they've got to defend that offense. And so the offensive philosophy has really dictated the team philosophy in that way.
And how has that transition been? Have certain guys had a hard time slowing down? Because gearing down is probably then having to gear those guys up.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's a good thing, really. I mean, we've really appreciated that. At some point during certainly fall training camp, but maybe even during the spring, like defensively, for example, we'll have to bring some of that back. We're kind of making an assumption, but I think it's a safe assumption that Arizona, our first opponent, offensively will be a tempo and pace-based offense. So we'll have to teach our defensive guys those mechanisms again. We don't want to get too far away from them being able to play one play, erase that from their minds, and move on quickly within 18 seconds to the next play.
Ed Lamb, associate or assistant head coach, rather, for BYU football with us on BYU Sports Nation. You've had some time to settle in, not much, but some time to settle in as a new staff. What do you feel like has been the biggest difference coming from Southern Utah up to BYU for you personally as a coach?
Well, initially it was I really missed the relationships I had. I had long-term, you know, in some cases 6 or 7 year relationships with players at Southern Utah and their families from the first time we talked to them in recruiting and then through missions oftentimes and into their senior year. And I just missed that terribly in the relationships in that community and with the people I was working with, you know, players and coaches and staff around campus. But that's normalized somewhat for me here. Obviously, I don't know these guys for as long, or my relationships aren't as deeply connected as the ones I had at Southern Utah. But very quickly, I'm getting to know the team, and so from a personal standpoint, I'm enjoying it more and more every day as I can have some fun with these guys, and I get to know their personalities, and they get to know mine. That's I think in part why we all do it in this business, is to be around young people.
It's funny that we build Lavelle Edwards Stadium and you use it like 10 times a year, you know, where fans can come in. So every event there is a big deal. So Stadium of Fire included, right? So you have the spring football game, March 26th. What can the fans expect on that day?
Yeah, the talk so far, I don't think we've finalized anything, but the talk so far from Coach Satake is that he would like to see the team split into 2 teams and have as close to a game as we can have. And so over the years, you know, I think we've all seen, but I've certainly been a part of just straight scrimmages where the offense stays on one sideline and the defense on another. And we've had times where we've actually kept like a unique scoring system where the defense gets a certain number of points for tackles for loss or interceptions or forced punts, things like that. And I think really what we're going to try to do is peel back the complexity of our offense and defense and split into 2 equal teams, and as necessary, use offensive players on defense and defensive players on offense and try to get just a competitive atmosphere going.
We've talked a lot about Jamal Williams and his big personality, and you're one of the people that we've talked to him about in terms of what he brings back to the team. But on the coaching staff, who has the biggest personality on the coaching staff right now?
Reno Mahe. No
Couldn't have guessed that one.
Yeah, he just has a knack. I mean, sometimes guys like Jamal and Reno, they can come off like they're not very serious, but if you really study the way that Reno works in and out of the room, in and out of the staff room, he has a way of keeping things light and keeping people getting along well, and he's not afraid to put himself in a vulnerable position and not afraid to bring humor to any situation. And it's magic what that can do in a tense environment. And we haven't hit any drama yet, not being in the season, but in the middle of the season, I'm quite certain that there will be times where he'll save our staff from being in situations where guys are, just too tense and not working well together.
Did Ty Detmer have his quote-unquote snow boots on today by chance?
Well, we went into the indoor practice facility, so I think he kept them in his locker.
Very nice. Update us on the safeties, which is the position that you coach.
Yeah, so we're just working through a lot of different depth chart possibilities right now. And then today, for example, Micah Hanneman and Eric Takanaka were running the first group of guys. But it's really a deep position, and at this point, I think there's about 6 guys playing currently that are healthy, that are definitely capable of playing. But we've got some guys that are just right now they're not completely out of football, but they're not going full speed either, with Kai Nakua and Zane Anderson and Jacobson, and so those 3 guys will bring a lot more depth. So it's a group that I really enjoy working with, and I think it's a highly competitive group, and I think we have there's a lot of potential there for guys to make meaningful contributions on game day.
Assistant head coach of BYU football, Ed Lamb, with us on BYU Sports Nation. When you finalize the roster, per se, how many different safeties will see the field on a regular basis once the games actually start?
I would think that we'll be 4 or 5 at most. When we get against some tempo teams, 4 guys might be necessary. But if teams aren't running a pace offense, then 2 or 3 guys might be the better rotation. But the thing about safeties is, they tend to, their skill set, speed, and athletic ability and blocking and tackling abilities lead to a high tendency to be a really good special teams player. And so hopefully we'll be able to have maybe even 6 guys on the travel squad at the safety position and rounding out the core of our special teams.
Speaking of that, Ed, you also coach, you're the special teams coordinator. What can you tell us about special teams so far?
I think I've held us back in some ways in terms of putting together the skill part of the special teams, the snap, the hold, and the kick. We're focusing on PAT and field goal and punt throughout spring practice. Those are the phases of the game that aren't really, from game to game, they don't change a whole lot in terms of schematics, where kickoff and kickoff return and punt return, those really tend to change a lot from week to week. So we're focusing on the fundamentals of those 2 phases, field goal and punt. And I think at this point it's probably a good idea for me to start putting some depth charts out there as far as the snap, hold, and the kick, so I can see some consistent play out of those specialists.
Ed, it's great to get the insight into the safeties and the special teams and BYU spring football. We look forward to that spring game. And whatever Ty Detmer tells you, you don't have to wear snow boots or cowboy boots to be cool.
Yeah, well, his are Napoleon Dynamite, but I don't know if he told you that.
No, they're not.
Yeah. So I have Sorrells, but he's got Napoleon Dynamite boots.
The moon boots.
Moon boots. Oh, that's fantastic. Ed, great to talk to you. Thanks, man.
Good to talk to you guys.
Ed Lamb on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future.